I never expected a manila envelope to feel like a grenade, but there it was, heavy in my hand, humming with someone else's math and somebody else's confidence. 3 lines in, and they were asking for 6 figures interest, already compounding, like they'd planned this thing for months, and my signature was the last missing piece. You want a hook? There it is, a community that looks like suburbia, and a bill that could bankrupt a life. The envelope slid onto my kitchen counter, with the same dull authority you hear when a judge bangs a gavel, and I washed my hands before I opened it. Not ritual, just to slow myself down to buy space between feeling and action. The letter named the association. The enforcement committee cited sections of covenants and restrictions, and then neat columns, dates, violation codes, the fines, setback violation, encroachment, unauthorized use of association-controlled land. The tone was clinical, not angry, so the strike felt intentional, administrative, procedural, inevitable. I read it 3 times. My fence was where it had always been, the gravel drive, the same, the apple tree still leaning like an old uncle telling the son where to sit. None of it matched the language on the page. The notice referenced association-controlled land as if control were ownership, as if the act of mowing had transferred title. That felt wrong in my bones, but feeling isn't evidence, and the world that takes your money doesn't care about feelings. So I pulled the deed. I dug out the closing packet, the plat, the title policy, the dense paragraph of bearings and distances that had made me nod and sign years ago, thinking ink made things final. The legal description on my deed tied corners to iron rods and monuments, precise and measurable. The HOAs overlay the map they'd circulated, shaded strips in gray, and labeled them common without a single instrument number attached. Maintenance notes, sure. A record of who trimmed the benches, yes. No deed, no trail. Just an internal picture that had taken on the weight of authority through repetition. There was a pressure in that first letter, deadlines, payment instructions, more clarity about how to hand the money than about what I'd allegedly done. No prior warning, no documented conversation, just arithmetic and escalation. It was as if the first contact had skipped the human part and gone straight to the ledger. I could have called, explained, paid a portion to end the noise. But something about authority asserted without demonstration made me slow down. Verify before reacting. I scrawled it at the top of a legal pad and started to list each violation space beneath for evidence. The county recorder's office smells like old carpet and fluorescent light. It tastes like patience. I sat at a terminal and fed it my parcel number. My name, the legal description, filing history, there it all was. I searched adjacent parcels, the shaded green belts on the HOA's overlay, and found maintenance agreements, not deeds. Notes about who was supposed to mow, designations of oversight, but no instrument number, no deed conveying title to that gray strip. Maintenance, it turns out, is not the same as ownership. Whoever mowed my lawn didn't also sign away the deed. When documents point to each other, but none of them anchors the claim, you get circular authority. We say it's ours because our map says so, because our charter says so. The plat referenced the CC and Rs, the CC and Rs referenced the plat, and the plat shaded a strip nobody ever conveyed away. I sent the board questions in clean language. Please provide the recorded deed conveying the Greenbelt parcel. Please provide the instrument number. Please clarify the legal description. The reply arrived from Karen, the president. Polite, firm enforcement is based on the community overlay and continuous use. Internal practice is binding. It was the kind of answer that pivots past verification and asks for compliance. Then the volunteers came walking the edge of my yard, clipboards in hand, not knocking, not looking up. Procedure, not conversation. Notices stacked up, notice, pre-lien penalties revised. Numbers ballooned, $96,000, then $128,400. The escalation was quiet but relentless, like a clock that keeps ticking until your options narrow. Pressure needs not be loud, it needs to be sequential. I found a surveyor who had no truck with my neighborhood's logo, no ties to local boards. David Mills showed up at dawn with a tripod and a manner that treated corners like facts, not opinions. We walked the property corner to corner, iron rods underfoot, the GPS receiver humming. Bearings, distances, monuments each matched the legal description on my deed. At the northwest corner near the fence they'd cited, he measured, remeasured, then said, matter of fact, 3.7 feet inside your boundary. Not close. inside. He sealed the certificate, stamped the paper, and told me not to share anything until I had the certified copies. 2 days later, he handed me 3 stamped surveys. The strip, the HOA, called Greenbelt Unconveyed Remnant of the original tract, his note said. No recorded transfer, no instrument number. If they challenge this, he said, packing his gear, they'll need a competing license survey, not an overlay. That was the quiet lever I needed. I didn't storm the community hall. I didn't pick a fight in the parking lot. I did something less theatrical and more effective. I put the survey where paper belongs in the record, in front of the people who could make procedure meet evidence. At the compliance hearing, I walked up with a binder under my arm, slid certified copies across the table, and said 3 plain sentences. A licensed boundary survey confirms all structures are within deed limits. The adjacent strip is unconveyed. Absent conveyance, the association lacks jurisdiction for enforcement over that parcel. Karen's defense was practiced. The overlay has been in continuous use. Maintenance equals control. But a board member, quieter, more interested in numbers than rhetoric, asked what mattered. Do we have a recorded transfer? The pause that followed shifted oxygen in the room. The HOA's lawyer later said, what the survey already had maintenance does not create fee title. Repetition does not make record. The motion to pause enforcement pending legal review passed. The language in the room changed from assertion to verification. Here's the twist. It wasn't only the survey or the lawyer that bent the arc. It was neighbors, ordinary people who suddenly started asking, do we have a deed? Once one person asked, others checked their own plats, their own title pages. The assumption that maintenance equals ownership began to wobble as more binders got opened. The community, which had shrugged and nodded for years, became curious. That curiosity was not dramatic, but it was decisive. People began to realize the map they had trusted was a convenience, not necessarily the law. The board reconvened with counsel. The attorney reviewed records, compared them to the certified survey, and recommended rescinding enforcement tied to the remnant strip. The vote passed unanimously. The fines weren't negotiated down or split into payments. They were voided, removed from the ledger as if someone had corrected a miscalculation. A letter arrived a few days later, all fines, penalties, interest associated with Parcel 24B withdrawn in full, records updated, no apology, no fanfare, just correction. That administrative reset felt like justice, tidy, quiet, satisfying. The ledger that had grown into a threat returned to zero. The overlay that had been used like a gavel was revised. The shaded strip was no longer labeled common in the posted maps. Benches stayed where they'd always been, grass remained trimmed. The neighborhood's rhythm resumed, but the record was changed, and records, unlike assumptions, carry consequences. What I learned isn't romantic measure before you concede. Authority without record is often more theater than law. You can accept compliance because it's easier, pay the fine, move the fence, close the ledger, and your life goes on. But the line will have moved and others will live by that shifted line. Or you can do the quieter work, check the county records, hire someone who does not have a stake in local politics, and let certified paper do the arguing for you. And here's the part that lingers, correcting the record. Fix the immediate harm. The fines were gone. My fence stayed put, but it didn't come with an apology, and it didn't erase the way the assumption had shaped people's behavior for years. So I'll leave you with the question that keeps coming up at block parties and in comment threads. When a community treats an internal map as truth for decades and lives and plans around that map, does later correction make things right for those who built their choices on the assumption? In other words, is restoration of legal record enough? Or does the community owe a reckoning to the people who relied on the old story? Tell me what you think. Did you pay to avoid trouble, or did you push back and fight for record? Share your experience below. Argue for patience or for expedience. And if you've got a story about lines that moved without consent, drop it in the comments. I want to hear whether you stand with quiet verification or with quick compliance, and why.